Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. How are you all today? So, can you hear me? Can How are you? You're fine? How come there's always nobody sitting here? Alvin, come and sit in front. Who? What's your name? Sorry. The guy behind. You. The one who is turning the head. You. What's your name? Huh? Kadel. Yes, Kadel. Come, sit in front. And the friend can also come together. Yeah, like that take pictures so nice. Wow, 年轻有为的. Okay. Before we start today's session is Ask Me Anything. Yeah, but of course with a scope. It's about the different traditions in Buddhism. So before we start, let's do our weekly ritual. Let me see. On my left, who is new here, who has not introduced themselves. The gentleman in Siam, have you introduced yourself before? Yeah, you have. The guy also, and then behind Valerie, looks like Valerie, huh? Okay. And then that girl, okay, I know her, Li Jin. Then okay. On my right, all have introduced. Yes, very good. Michael, have you introduced yourself? You have, okay. So, Michael, right? Yeah. Yes. Okay, so everybody is in order. So today's topic, Ask Me Anything. What is the proper title? Huh? What tradition? Just traditions, Huh? Traditions of Buddhism? Is it? Okay. Traditions of Buddhism. So, AMA is not Ama. AMA is Ask Me Anything. So, in the past 2 sessions of Ask Me Anything, so today I decided, no, I'm going to break away from that cycle. I shall not say anything. I shall let you all ask. So, who will ask the first thing about traditions of Buddhism? Yeah, if you all don't ask, I will just sit here and look at you. So, yeah, today's session is about your questions. Yeah, if you don't ask, then I'll happily sit here. Yeah, there are a few things that. Oh, you have one person. What is your question?
Find out about the tradition of vegetarianism in Buddhism. It only came about in China. Is it Liang Huang who actually decreed vegetarianism?
Okay. So the good thing about Ahmad is that it can go anywhere. So very good question. So traditions can include the tradition of vegetarianism. So today in the whole world, vegetarianism has become quite popular, but for different reasons. In Buddhism, in particular Chinese Mahayana tradition, it started off with I think it's Liang Wu Di, Yeah. So there are different accounts on how exactly it started. One popular one is that there was a conversation where he asked, you know, Buddhism advocates compassion, so how can you all as monks and nuns be consuming meat? Yeah. So that kind of started, yeah, the whole lineage in a way. But there are also other considerations. One of them being that the Buddhist monastics used to be on what we call alms round. Yeah, predominantly the monks and nuns in the Buddha's time, and for many centuries to come, subsist on alms, meaning that they would go go towards the city or the town or village to in a way look for food. But look for food not in a sense look for food court lah, you know, but they would go houses to houses, and whoever should provide them with food, they would receive, and then when they have collected sufficient, they will retreat away to outside of the village, yeah, to wherever they were residing for that few days, and then they would share among themselves, consume the food, and then retire for the rest of the day to do that practice. Now fast forward to when Buddhism spread to China, we see in a way a clash of culture and thinking. It is said that there was a monk in Singapore. There was a venerable who passed a very interesting observation. He said that in the suttas, the Buddha described that how many past Buddhas all attain enlightenment in India. So he shared a very interesting analysis. He said, why is it that all the Buddhas would arise in India, yeah, and not in other places? Why not China? You know? Yeah, so he had his very interesting take on it. And he said, because Indian and Chinese are very different. For Indians, when they see a person sit there not doing anything, oh, they have high respect for them. Oh, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Oh, this person is a cultivator. Yeah? While the rest of us, we strive and pursue after this, after that. This person is willing to, you know, put aside everything and just sit there, do nothing. I mean, it's a tongue-in-cheek statement. And then he say, as opposed to Chinese don't value that. Chinese see young men, young women sit down there doing nothing. Huh? 游手好闲啊. Yeah. So his tongue-in-cheek take is that when Buddhism spread to China, going on alms is not very well received, at least back then. In particular, for some of the emperors, yeah, for some of the emperors throughout history, they would have high respect for religious teachers, yeah, not just Buddhist monks, but also Taoist priests, scholars, and so on. Yeah, and some of them were appointed as what we call 国师. So like An Shi Gao was one of them. Yeah, there are various ones. Our famous Xuan Zhang Dashi was given a lot of patronage as well. So as a result, it is said that some of the emperors look upon the monks and nuns going on alms not with favorable eyes. Yeah, because for them it's like, you mean the emperor cannot take care of his teacher? That his own teacher must go on the street with an alms bowl just like a beggar? Yeah. So at some point, monks in a way were not allowed to go on alms. But how is it done? The emperor basically decreed that the monasteries will be given provided staple food from the nation's granary. So they'll be given 粮票, basically it's like coupons. And the monasteries can then receive grains, receive materials from the imperial court. So over time, monasteries started to not go on arms. Yeah, a lot of things, evolved and adapted with the Chinese society. So besides that, then at some point, something else changed, which is that the monasteries started having land. These were offered by lay people who supported the monasteries, and eventually, at some point, monks, the monastics started cultivating the land themselves to be self-sufficient. So you can imagine if the monks and nuns were self-sufficient, then were they about to have pigs and chickens and have farm? Yeah, which then meant that they had to kill themselves, which would be a bit odd. Yeah, all various different conditions over time then evolved and led to the adoption of vegetarian diet within monasteries. Yeah, today it's seen as a natural thing. Yeah, but when Buddhism first spread to China, it was not a compulsory, mandatory practice. So today, vegetarianism has become quite a fashionable thing in the West. Yeah, but within the confines of Buddhism, it is primarily adopted by the Chinese Mahayana tradition. Having said that, it is not that the other traditions eat meat. Yeah, it's not that the other traditions are not vegetarian. It is that the other traditions in Buddhism, they are merely observing the monastic Vinaya. Meaning that within the Sangha, so if we have the Sangha, the lay people have the 5 precepts, right? The Sangha also have our own precepts. So for the Sangha, we have the Vinaya, which includes the Prakti Moksha, or in Pali, Patimokkha. Patimokkha. And this is basically our monastic code. Yeah. And this is more or less the same for all the different traditions, be it Theravadan Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism. And when we say Mahayana Buddhism, it includes Chinese Mahayana. So we have Mahayana Buddhism, we have Chinese Mahayana, we have Tibetan, we have the Korean, we have Japanese, we have Vietnamese. Yeah. So all these are actually all under Mahayana Buddhism. Yeah, and the Vinaya in all these different traditions are mostly the same for monastics. For lay is all the same. 5 precepts, 10 precepts, same. 5 precepts, 8 precepts, same. Yeah, but for the Vinaya itself, there are some, but by and large the same. And in all the Sangha Vinaya, yeah, that means the Vinaya part, which is for the monastics, there's no stipulation for monks and nuns to be vegetarian. In the Chinese Mahayana tradition, we chose the vegetarian diet on the basis of the Bodhisattva precepts under the Brahmanet tradition, and also based on some sutras. Yeah, but within Tibetan, Japan, even to some extent Vietnamese, maybe Vietnamese is more like Chinese Mahayana, but Tibetan, Korean and Japanese, they are not strict vegetarian as well. Yeah. From what I know, in Korean and Japanese Buddhism, within the monastery, they will probably observe vegetarian diet as well. But when they are out and about, some lineages may, some lineages are not so strict about that. Then, what it means is that for the Theravada tradition, Theravadin tradition, they don't have a stipulation to be vegetarian. But it doesn't mean that they cannot be vegetarian. Yeah, because for them, whatever is offered, as long as it's within the stipulation that is allowed, then they are okay. And the stipulation being, as long as the meat does not come from an animal that has been seen, heard, or suspected to be killed for you. That means if you go to a person's house, if you're a monk, and then the lay person say, Sifu, wow, today we are so happy for you to be here. Let me go and kill a chicken for you. Then in the teaching it says you cannot consume that. In fact, of course, you should stop that person from killing at the first place. Yeah. Or let's say by the time you arrive, before anything, you are talking, then you heard, then you see one of the family member killing the chicken. Then you see a chicken running around. Then later, when you are invited inside, then the devotee say, Sifu, we are preparing a meal of chicken for you. Then jialat, you saw the chicken die. When you look at it as a rule, then you just say, if you've seen it, or you heard the chicken cry, yeah, if you know you cannot eat, or you suspect, maybe the person never say anything about which chicken, but you suspect cannot be so gum, just now killed, then now suddenly there's chicken, so you shouldn't eat. Yeah, if you just follow the rule, that's what it says. But to me, even if you don't have the rule, 于心何忍 To me, there's no such rule for lay people, in a sense. Lay rule don't have this, right? But to me, you shouldn't need Buddha to set down every single rule for you to say you cannot do this or do that. I always tell people, the Buddha never have a rule that says I cannot spit at you, that I cannot, right? But does it mean that I can do it or I should do it? Shouldn't, right? Yeah, so to me, many times, whether we should be vegetarian or not, depends on a condition and depends on how you feel towards an animal dying for you. Yeah. If you learn the teachings over time and you start to practice more compassion and you look upon the suffering and appreciate that being, that sentient being is just like us, sentient, not the same. We cannot say chicken is like us. Yeah. But it is like us sentient, able to feel suffering, able to feel fear, feel pain, then I think quite naturally we would choose the way of sustaining ourselves. We'll choose our meal that involves less cruelty. Yeah, I don't say that we must be like this or like that, yeah, but perhaps we should choose the meal that has less cruelty. Yeah, so in the past maybe few years, I've seen some videos. Some YouTubers, they showcase some exotic meal. Then they eat not sotong, they eat the octopus, live octopus. They soak the octopus in the soy sauce, and then octopus, octopus still struggling, right? It's like, really? In 2017 or 16, now it's 2019. Do you really need that kind of food? Or sometimes they put the octopus on the hot plate, and 4 or 5 of them all, you see, then they take chopstick, then press it down, then the octopus, yeah. I mean, you think about it. You want fresh? You really want fresh? Later you get reborn as a sea creature, you really have it fresh, Huh? Do we really need to be so fresh about food? Dead like what?
If you saw a fish, that you are in the island.
In the what?
That you are in the island.
In the island.
You were starving. Then you saw a dead fish. Can you cook it? Is it considered as killing? It's really dead.
Yes. So he has a good question. Ash asks, if you are in an island and you see a dead fish and you're hungry, can you cook it? Can you kill it and eat? No, you cannot kill it.
But you said dead fish?
Yeah, lor.
I need to ask that. Is it considered as killing?
You said that it's already, you said dead fish, right? So you cannot kill a dead fish.
I know.
Then you ask me whether you can kill it. Cannot. It's already dead. You can only kill a live fish. So is it dead or alive? Dead. Then you cannot kill it anymore. It's already dead. So strictly speaking, if you see a dead fish and you cook it and eat it, it's not violating the precept on killing. But if you find a fish that's already dead, you have to be careful because you don't know how it died. Did it reach retirement age and claim CPF and yeah. That's the trouble with eating animals. When you find a dead animal, there's a high chance it died of some illness. So you are stuck with a predicament. As long as you choose to eat animal, you either have to kill it or really hope that it die of natural causes. Yeah. And then I have to check whether it has claimed CPF or anything. Okay, so this is one aspect of the traditions of Buddhism. Next question. Oh, jialat already? Yes.
So, what's the purpose of chanting in different traditions?
Oh, the practice of chanting of different tradition. Okay. Before I answer that question, then let me change the title a bit. Practices and traditions of Buddhism. So chanting, what is the purpose of chanting? So we have to start from the scratch. Okay, let me try to see whether I can cover in 5 minutes. Okay, first, very quickly, chanting was first performed to commit the teachings to memory. Yeah, it started not the way we do it today. Yeah, whether it's in Pali chanting or Chinese chanting. Chanting started as a form of recitation. Then over time, intonation were added and evolved into what we call chanting today. Yeah. So the first purpose is to commit the teachings to memory. Okay. So this was the first purpose. We see in a few suttas where the Buddha instructed Venerable Sariputta to lead the monks to recite certain suttas while he retire. Retire not in the sense of retire, 65 years old retire, but as in he retired to rest, and he instructed Venerable Sariputta to lead the community of monks to recite the teachings. From the commentaries from the different lineages, we also see that after the Buddha passed away, this was continued. Yeah, first at the first council, where they recited the teachings to sort of compile, yeah, sort of to have a proper list of the Buddha's teachings. Because in the Buddha's time, this was not done in that sense. There was no so-called syllabus. Yeah, why? Because the Buddha basically answered people's questions, clarified people's doubts, yeah, on a case-to-case basis. The Buddha didn't say, "Oh, now that I have attained enlightenment, and now I'm the Sama Sambuddha, I must come out with a very structured course, 3-year course, leading to a diploma, then another 4-year course leading to a professional degree, Bachelor of Buddhism, and then another 2 years Masters, and another 5 years PhD module, and then specialization." And no, the Buddha didn't do that. The Buddha talked to people, people asked him questions. For the most part, the Buddha didn't even go around telling people that they must be enlightened. The Buddha merely answered questions according to their questions. And then when he observed that the person's mental faculty is ripe, is ready, is matured, then he would point them to the next level. So in some cases, the Buddha merely tell them what they need, what they ask. In some rare cases where the Buddha observed individuals, yeah, who were already matured, he would go out of his way, talk to them, inspire them, sometimes question them, ask them, what good is the way of your life currently? And in this way, get them to think. You know how sometimes our friends ask us like, how's your job? If nobody asks us, we just, we go to work every day, just clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out, And then suddenly one day we catch up with a friend, or maybe we are just on a bus, in a plane, on a train, and, in the journey of the fellow passenger just asks about your work, and then it get you to think, it's like, yeah, what's the purpose of my job, huh? Day in, day out, clock in, clock out, year-end bonus, yeah. Then next year, get a new set of leave. You get leave, you must clear leave. You earn money, you must spend it, yeah. And it may get you to think like, yeah, maybe I should do something else with my life, Yeah, in some cases, that's what the Buddha did. Now, all these different set of collections include when people come to the Buddha and become his disciple, then the Buddha gives them a bit more teachings depending again on the stage that they are at. Yeah, to further them in the path until they reach enlightenment. So all these collections during the Buddha's time were recited in small pockets. Most of them didn't hear all the teachings, you know. That's a good news. You don't have to listen to all the teachings to attain enlightenment. But you must make sure that whatever you have heard covers Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. Yeah. And depending on how much you understand or know about the specifics, yeah, and depending on how much you need to know, yeah, then that's all that's needed. Because the Buddha didn't set up an institute of Buddhist study, yeah, central body to control the syllabus, yeah. As a result, there were even some monks who learned his teaching, practiced, got on, you know, and consider the Buddha as his teacher without ever seeing the Buddha. So if we know from different sources that sporadic or not sporadic, isolated chanting, yeah, or recitation were performed during the Buddha's time to commit to memory, and also as a means of the oral tradition, where teachings are transmitted from teacher to student. First from the Buddha to those disciples who learn from him directly, and subsequently down to the next generation. Yeah. Eventually this chanting became more formalized. Yeah. And today this practice is done not just to commit teachings to memory. This remains true, but on top of that, it serves to develop devotion and faith. I've explained in various classes on different occasions. For example, if you look at the recitation that we do, it includes verses in praise of the Buddha, yeah, Buddha Vandana. No? If you turn to page 5, just now we recited Iti Piso, Bhagava, and so on. Yeah, today, in many Theravadan tradition, they fondly refer to this as Iti Piso. Yeah? Yeah. Many times you ask them, do you recite Buddha Vandana? They may look at you like, Then you ask them, do you recite Iti Piso? Yeah, oh, I know, Iti Piso, I know. Yeah, but actually Iti Piso is part of the verse. The proper term of this whole section is Buddha Vandana. It is a collection of 9 of the epithets that were commonly said about the Buddha. That means people describe the Buddha in this way. You can actually find this collection, sometimes the full 9, sometimes some of them mentioned in different suttas. He would say, once the Buddha was at Kosala. There was a village called, there was a town called Kalama. There were the Kalama, and they heard that the Buddha was in town. And some of them said, this has been said about this Gautama ascetic. He is an arahant. He is a blessed one. He is this, he is that. And the whole set of description is basically what we are reciting now. You know? So we are, in a way, reenacting what was said in the past. Now, so this part is less about the teachings, less about the teachings, but to develop devotion and faith. Yeah? But for what purpose? Because we don't know the Buddha so intimately. Did you all have coffee with the Buddha last week? Anyone? No, So how do we know about the Buddha? We know him, one way is by reciting these verses. Because these verses, if you again look at page 5, the Buddhist library under Bhante Dhammaratana, he has very kindly put in the Chinese an English translation on the right panel, yeah, which is why I have shared with you all before. When you come in earlier, take the time to read through what you're going to recite. Otherwise, it becomes a very spiritual thing, but it doesn't have the full impact. Yeah, when you chant, Iti piso bhagava araham samma sambuddho vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavido anuttaro purisa dhammasarati satta deva manusanam buddho bhagavati. Oh, it feels very... if you go to the, let's say, Thai tradition, then the way they chant is more or less the same, but with slightly different intonation. I remember in the 80s, I mentioned many times, you know the Gong Tao movie? Then they always, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sam. Then when I was a kid, like him, I feel like, power, 来了. You know? Yeah. But that's the Namo tassa. But imagine if instead of doing it that way, right? Then they come in, then they say, homage to him, the blessed one, the worthy one, the perfectly enlightened one. Then it's like, where's the power? So the intonation works on our emotional part. But if you only do that, and you only feel that, then you only have the one-sided faith. Because faith, there's one part of the faith which cannot be helped, is based on emotion. You hear a Bante chanting, you hear a Fa-Si chanting, you know my favorite, Ru. Yeah. Then you feel very inspired, you know. Some people when they go for chanting, they even cry. It serves that purpose. But it is supposed to also serve the other purpose, which is you chant knowing what you're chanting. Because then this leads to wisdom, understanding, clarity, and this develops the other side of faith. Yeah. In Buddhism, faith has many facets. If you only have the first type of faith, that's a good start, but not a good end. Yeah. It must evolve into faith with understanding. That you have faith because you understand, not that you understand because you have faith. And that understanding comes from wisdom. But chanting can help to lead us towards that. The other purpose today in chanting is to, in short, develop some form of concentration. It can help you to develop some form of concentration. How does it work? You see, the trouble is, sometimes when it comes to religion, people don't like everything to be explained, you know. You like to just feel a bit mystical, more interesting. Yeah, but what to do? You choose this Sifu, everything explained. When you do chanting, if you chant out loud, or you chant inside your mind, both occupies your mind. It occupies your mind. And by occupying your mind, it interrupts your discursive thoughts. It interrupts your discursive thoughts. But this works only if you put in the effort. What do I mean by that? Initially, when you learn chanting, you put in effort because you're not familiar. When you're not familiar and you want to do it properly, you need to put in effort. So initially, you don't really know the chanting, so you must look at the text, and you don't even know how to pronounce, don't know where to stop, don't know where to, so you pay attention with your ear to listen to Sifu's chanting. Then Sifu chant wrong, you also chant wrong. Then while you try to pronounce it correctly, or itipiso, or then later supatipano, or you really follow. So if you really notice, initial part, when you're doing chanting, you really don't think of anything else. But after a few years, steady already, memorize the whole book. Itipiso bhagava araham samma sambuddho vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavido anutaro purisa dhammasarati satta deo. Then I really know. Then unfortunately, this is not the fault of chanting. This is the fault of the chanter. Yeah. I ever noticed before last time in temple, sometimes the amma, but some amma, some I don't know which one, some. Yeah, people chanting, then sometimes there are breaks or what, then the amma sit down there chanting. Wow, one time chanting and then can scold people, you know. Yeah, so this is the fault of a chanter, not chanting itself. Yeah. Unfortunately, we tend to lump them together. So chanting can help in all this. Oh. So if you look at this, this actually can lead to wisdom. And if you practice chanting properly, while chanting, your body shouldn't be doing other things that is unwholesome. So your bodily action is somewhat purified. Your verbal is also purified because you are chanting either the names of the Buddhas, which usually represents wholesome qualities, or you are chanting the words of truth that the Buddha has said before, so it's wholesome as well. And if you put in effort, your mind, at least during that point in time, is purified because it's not involved in unwholesome, habitual thoughts. So during chanting, you can purify nominally your body and speech, and to some extent your mind. And if your mind is sufficiently purified, you can develop concentration. And so as a result, you have your body, you have your speech, and you have your mind purified. And if you understand the teachings, it leads to right view, which develops wisdom. So chanting can cover the whole spectrum of the threefold practice. The challenge is whether we as the chanter really fulfill the whole thing and not Namo Tassa Bhagavata. Yes.
They set certain numbers of
times to
like
chant.
108 times and how many times. So is there a reason behind it?
Is there a reason? So how about the chanting, the sequence, the number of times to chant? So like most chanting bit has 108 of the beats. From what I know, I have mentioned before this sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya about feelings. The exposition on the 108 kinds of feelings. So in that sutta, it starts off with the monks sharing their understanding of feelings. And they all have different rendition of what they understand. One say there's only feelings, just feeling. Another one say there are two types, bodily and mental. Then another one say there are three types, painful, pleasant, and neither painful nor pleasant. Then there are those who say 6 types, feelings arising from the eye, feeling arising from the ears, and so on, the 6 sense basis. Then there are those who say there are feelings that are sensual, there are feelings that is otherworldly, supramundane. And then when they all have their sharing, Venerable was like wondering who is correct. So went to see the Buddha. The Buddha said they are all correct, but there are more. And the Buddha expanded the set to include 108. And from this 108, we can, from there, arise wisdom, arise revulsion, arise thoughts of cultivation, or it can give rise to defilements. So from what I know, 108 is corresponding to the 108 kinds of different aspects of suffering arising from the defilements linked to the 108 feelings. But does it mean that if you chant only 5 times, is it bad? How about 23 times? How about 42 times? Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy. How about 67? You know, you chant until 67, then jialat, you have to go and bang sai. How? For that matter, I don't think Buddha keep count of how many times we chant. But rather, the number of times in a way represents the amount of effort you put in. The amount of effort you put in to purify yourself would purify you to that extent. So don't worry about the count. Just chant and practice as much as you can. Because the tendency is, as the 祖师大德 say, 起心动念无非是业. Yeah, that the moment we have our thoughts arise, yeah, it is none other than committing committing karma, yeah, unwholesome karma. Yeah, so for most unenlightened beings, the moment we stop chanting, immediately 烦恼纷纷而起, defilements start to arise. Yes.
I just going to ask this belief about reincarnation, obviously very prevalent in Tibetan Buddhism, right? Clearly it's quite inconsistent with the identity view, the anatta. How do we explain that? Especially to non-believers, because I mean Christianity they have a hope, right? Or the Catholic Church. The Dalai Lama is the hope figure for Buddhism.
That's how the West look at it.
Yeah, exactly. So when they talk about the lamas, it's always about reincarnation. And then if you talk about kind of like our doctrine, it's about anatta, which is we don't believe in the soul, the permanent soul. And yet, Tibetan believe that.
So, interestingly, a student on Thursday, in the Thursday class, asked the same exact question. Reincarnation versus rebirth. So for more information, go and listen to the recording. Let me just give you in brief. And of course, when I say in brief, it means half an hour. Let me try. Give me a chance to try to say in brief. Reincarnation. I mentioned that day about how reincarnation and rebirth are both English words. In a way, rebirth was actually the term reincarnation, from what I know, exists in Western vernacular even before that. If you look at different Western religion in the past, and also Mid-Asia religion, there were a lot of accounts and stories about different gods incarnating, taking the form of animals. Because to incarnate literally means to take into flesh, yeah, to become physical. So this concept was already present in those religions. And so for them, for those religions back then, whether in Greek mythology, I'm also almost going to say Greek mythology, actually to call it Greek mythology is not really right. Yeah, it's not a myth. For them back then, it was a religion. The whole notion to call it Greek mythology was due to a concerted effort to put down those religions. I won't mention who was trying to put it down. You all can go and research and figure out yourself. Yeah. So the later religion that spread over there, it is said, yeah, try to put down those native religion. So call it Greek mythology, the Nordic mythology, and so on. Yeah, but in the earlier days, it is what it is. They really believed those religion, you know. And so in those religion, there were stories of their god taking the form of animals, as cows, as swan, and as different forms. Yeah, so that process, sometimes the term used is to incarnate. Yeah. So reincarnation has that notion. In among Buddhists today, we often say, oh, Hindus believe in reincarnation, Buddhism believe in rebirth. Some of the earlier translations also use the term reincarnation. But Buddhists oftentimes nowadays choose to use the word rebirth to separate, to highlight the difference in our understanding of this process. Because to reincarnate seem to suggest that there's something else that is not flesh that is going into a flesh. And that something that is not flesh, that means not material, is often seen as the soul. In Buddhism, we don't say that there's actually a soul that goes into the body. We say that when conditions are right, consciousness arises. So it's not that there's something extra that is a soul moving from life to life. But yet, from life to life, they are linked. The new life is induced by the earlier life. In various teachings, different metaphors have been used, such as describing the continuum as a mind stream, such as describing the passage of rebirth like different candles lighting one after another, the flame never really traveling from one candle to the next, but always induced by the preceding one and then inducing the next one. Yeah. That is the closest description of the rebirth process without having to invoke a soul.
But they believe it's the same guy, right?
In the Tibetan tradition, the way it's described appeared as though the 13th Dalai Lama is the same as 14th Dalai Lama, right? But if you look at the pictures, they are different people. What? So are they still insisting they are the same? It cannot be the case that Tibetan insists that it's literally the same person. They are saying that it is a reincarnation or rebirth of the 13th Dalai Lama in the same way as we say, oh, you are the same as is the same person as the 5-year-old you. It's as the same to that extent. You cannot say that earlier on when you walk in the room with me, are you the same person as the person who walked in just now? If it's the same, that means these 1-2 hours have been wasted. You didn't learn anything. Isn't it? Not just you, all of them. When the moment I enter and you were already seated here, are you the same person who was sitting here just now? Now you're wondering, who was that? Yeah. Because if it's the same person, same exact person, ignoring the physical first, because physical is already medically proven, nothing to prove anymore. Yeah, there's no way for anyone to say that, no, scientifically, I'm the same person. If you're exactly the same person, jialat already. Yeah, because our very existence hinge on us not being the same person. The breathing process requires us to have an exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide and whatnot. That is happening very vigorously, you know. Even while we sit in meditation, there's a very vigorous process happening over here, you know. Yeah. So physically, we are inconstant. That is a bygone, it's a long gone conclusion. Yeah. How about mental? You know, how about this very awareness? It seems at the same time, while we have to agree that it shouldn't be the same, but it does feel like it's the same person who was sitting here and wondering why Sifu is not here yet, isn't it? And up to this point, as you are grappling with the notion of no self, you're like, no, it's the same person, ma. Yeah, and yet, logically speaking, when you think about it, it is not quite the same person. This gap is what our cultivation is about. Yeah, to narrow this gap to the point where you see no contradiction between the two. And then you ta-ta, so especially in Tibetan Buddhism, the teaching on no self, no self-nature, on emptiness. Emptiness. Where's the emptiness? Emptiness is so strong, it is impossible to be mistaken that they think it's the same person. So I see it more as, it's quite a mouthful if each time they refer to the 14th Dalai Lama and people ask, so, 14th Dalai Lama is the reincarnation of 13th Dalai Lama. More convenient and more straightforward for them, yes, he's the reincarnation. Than to say, well, technically he is the rebirth, but this is not exactly the same. And then, you know, every time a BBC interviewer or some news reporter asks, and then they have to give a 2-hour discourse and send a person for a 3-year retreat to understand before they can have a press release. Yeah. So, yeah, reincarnation and rebirth. But there are a lot of other implications to this. And among all the different traditions, when I say traditions, I'm talking about the Theravada, Mahayana, and within Mahayana we have Chinese, Tibetan, Korean, Japanese, Vietnamese, and so on. All these traditions, at the core, is the teaching of 4 noble truths, 8 full path. And within this teaching is the teaching of anicca, dukkha, anatta, which together can be encompassed with sunyata, emptiness. Yeah. I hope I answered your question, or at least clarified.
Go back and listen to the rest of the
Yeah. Okay. Any final questions or thoughts? Yes.
So you are saying that Buddhism is an evolving religion.
Huh?
Buddhism is an evolving religion. It evolved through the time and evolve. The tradition, the practices are evolving all the time.
Evolving. From which part do you see that it's evolving?
Because you were saying that it evolved into different faith with understanding that will then lead to wisdom.
Did I say that?
Yeah.
This part? Wait, look at the screen. I wrote down what I said. Did I say that Buddhism is a religion that evolved in this way? No.
Understanding?
Huh?
It's a wrong understanding on my part.
I think I mentioned something linked to devotion, faith, and so on, related to chanting. You would be correct to say that the practice of chanting has evolved over time. It started off as a means to commit the teachings to memory. Yeah, but in a sense, the practice of chanting has evolved. So certain practices do evolve, but the Dharma itself, the core, which is describing the truth, hasn't so-called changed.
So we won't define it as an evolving religion.
If we define it as an evolving religion, does it instill more faith in you and inspire you to practice harder? If it does, yes, it's an evolving religion. If it causes you to be perplexed and have doubt, no, it doesn't evolve. Yeah. Buddhism can be described in this way, the way I understand it. There's the core, which is the Dhamma. And this points to the truth. And because the truth is how things are, and how things are is the way how things are, that part doesn't change with human civilization. It is just the way it is. Anicca, dukkha, anatta, this part doesn't change. Yeah? But there's the different ways to practice of the Dhamma to reach this. Depending on different people, then different practices appeal to them. Different practices resonate with them. Yeah. And so as a result, this part does evolve. And has to evolve. Yeah. And that's why even the languages have changed. Are you okay? You're okay? You're thinking okay.
So in regards to chanting, there's this 超度. After someone passed away, then they'll have like monks chanting for the.
That is a very good question. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Not that I don't want to answer. About 超度, next week's topic. What is next week's topic? Is it about 超度? What is next week's topic? I think it's what?
Titles and significance.
Huh?
Buddhist titles and significance.
Buddhist title and significance. Don't know how to spin this inside. But I think it's an important question to ask. But we have exceeded by 15 minutes. So I think I want to wrap up. Keep this in mind. If you all want to know the answer to that question, come back next week. Okay. 来，愿消三障诸烦恼，愿得智慧真明了，普愿罪障悉消除，世世常行菩萨道。阿弥陀佛，起立。